Good morning. Welcome to Books at the Bottom of the Stairs. My name's Lorene. I'm so glad you're here. I have quite a few books to talk about this time, and they are fiction. The nonfiction was last week if you're looking for recommendations as to what I'm going to read in Nonfiction November. And I believe the volume is starting to build on other channels' recommendations as to what they're going to read. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to see what other people have. But in all honesty, back there in Steve's books, there's probably a whole other Nonfiction November's worth of nonfiction to read. So I don't really need any new recommendations. So, fiction-wise, I'm going to start with Legacy. And this is by Wobeshig Rice. And he wrote, oh darn, I'll have to put it in the notes below because this, I think, is his debut novel. Oh my goodness, what was it? No, it's not going to come to me. No, total zero there. Anyhow, this is his first novel, and it is about Eva Gibson, who is a university student living in Toronto. She's homesick and anxious to finish her first year of university education, and she comes from an Anishinaabe community. So we are meeting Eva in Toronto, and we are also meeting her family back on the reservation. And the family back on the reservation had not that long ago had the tragedy of was it the grandparents? Yes, the grandparents had, or was it the parents? It was the parents who had died in a car crash. And so the eldest child, who was sort of in his early 20s, took over the caring of the younger children, Eva being one of the younger ones. And so we get to meet the response of all the kids to the trauma of the parents being killed, and the isolation that they have with the brother not being able to look after the family quite as well as he would like, although he's doing a pretty good job. And Eva goes off to university, that's her goal. And she's just a young Native girl in a city that is not kind to young Native girls. So she has something happen to her which impacts the whole family, and the story takes it from there. We get to see each of the children's points of view as to what's happened to Eva. And the ending, I can understand why the ending is the ending. However, I felt that it was a bit easy, a bit, well, I was surprised in the sense that I didn't think that's where the author would go. So I was a little bit disappointed, but at the same time, it was well written, and I was surprised. Oh, I've got a book stabbing me in the back. Oh, the Lazy Sunday book, cartoon, Calvin and Hobbes, jabbing me in the back. Okay, so the ending of the book was a bit of a surprise, but also a bit of a disappointment. Now, in terms of the writing, I would say that this is not as strong as Wobeshig Rice's second book. I really did like the second book, and I believe there is a third one either out or on the way. I will continue to read this author. I really enjoyed it, and I think that probably with one more edit, this novel would have been like excellent. As it is, I would say that it's good. It's good. It's worth it it's worth reading if you liked the second book. Because then you get an idea of how the author is developing. And I do think he's going to be an author that is really, worth following. Also Canadian and First Nations. So if you're doing reading across Canada, that is a possible book for meeting those prompts. All right, the second, this book, this is the one I got that was so scary and big. Well, I'm going to leave that for a minute because, I even wonder if I should do a separate talk on it. Dig is a book that I would 100% recommend. I have not read anything else by A.S. King, and does it even tell me? They're probably There are probably others. We have Marla and Gottfried, who are the parents of about, I'm trying to remember if it's 4 or 5 children who are adults, well into their adults, and those children now have teenage children. And so we're seeing the 3 generations. Marla and Gottfried came from small beginnings. They were doing sort of okay. Things went a little bit south, and Gottfried had to go back to the family farm, which was a potato farm. And somehow, through not so nice means, managed to do well out of the farm. I don't want to give, the plot points away, but he has done well, whereas his brother and his parents didn't do quite so well. And Gottfried has become rather obsessed with the accrual of money. And Marley has become super obsessed with not sharing it. She has decided that in order for her kids to really thrive, to not really pander them in any kind of way, to not give them anything extra. So once they've left home, they're super on their own. But it's completely unnecessary for the amount of tight-fistedness that she's got, because what we end up seeing is the impact on the 3rd generation, the grandchildren, who are ranging. I'm not quite sure how young the youngest one was. At times I thought maybe she was 6, and then other times I thought maybe she was an early teen. So the youngest one I'm not 100% sure on, but they've all got a significant crisis that they're dealing with, and so are the parents. And in at least 2 cases, a little bit of a handout would have made like a significant difference into the lives of this family. So Gottfried has the dilemma of being between Marla's unreasonable expectations and the kids, who are not actually asking for anything. I guess over the years they've just realized not coming from there, but he's starting to see what's happening and getting a better sense of where his family is and isn't. And I think the points of view from the kids are really interesting. They have got, there's one who's deeply impoverished. There's one who's pretty impoverished, but he and his mom are making fairly good strides, but it's just such a sort of unnecessary hardship. It's like they just keep getting kicked in the head. Just one of those bad luck, sad luck kinds of stories. I'm not sure that money would make a ton of difference, but it would certainly keep them fed. This isn't all about money, but it's more about the idea of generosity, and it's more about the idea of what you can and cannot do for family. Money isn't going to ease everybody's passions and faults and foibles, but if you're not only generous with your time but with your resources, then you can build a family that's going to keep coming together. And what Marla keeps doing is driving wedges amongst everybody. And Gottfried, I don't think he really, I think he understands what's happening, but I don't think he understands her methods. And so this is the struggle that Gottfried is coming to. And so by the end of it, it's not a nice wrapped up ending. In fact, the ending was a little bit peculiar. Lunchtime, spaghetti and meatballs. So the ending is a little bit sad, I would say. It's a bit of an emotional ending. I didn't cry, but something happens that's just slightly implausible. But on the other hand, I'm really glad it happened. I think it allowed for the cousins to come together in a way that their parents were unable to as children, and don't seem to be able to do as adults, as adult siblings in a family. So we get to see the 3rd generation's struggles and successes that are a lot more wholesome than what's happened prior. So I really like this book. There's a lot of great description. I thought the characters were well drawn. Considering the large cast of characters, I thought that the voices were very distinct, and you really got a sense of what were their conundrums, what was their motivations, and what was a sensible trajectory for each of these characters. Nobody acted out of turn, not out of turn, but out of, no character acted out of character. There we go. Totally recommend, 5 out of 5. Okay, the next one I am reading, which is a little in advance, I'm telling it to you a little in advance of my book club reading it, As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow. And it is by Zulfa Katau, who is a Syrian-Canadian living in Switzerland right now. Now, before I opened this book, I don't know why I thought it was for Palestine. It doesn't really matter because in a way, to me, Palestine, Syria, Yugoslavia, all those places where the wars are so intense and yet so unrealistic, untouchable for me in Canada. It's a hard thing to read when you are sort of on a journey with a character who's experiencing like a trauma now, and it makes me want to. I'm struggling with myself. How do I reach out? How can I make amends? How can I help in any kind of a way? And it doesn't feel good to say, well, reading their story is part of healing. Well, I'm not harmed. The author may or may not be harmed. The characters in the book represent people who have been harmed, and it just falls flat in terms of a placebo on how to make me feel good in the face of other people's trauma. So have to recognize that emotion was going through the book, through my head as the reader of the book, and so occasionally the things that were happening in this book were so upsetting because they're so unnecessary. The unnecessary cruelty that we inflict on each other as a species is just like, it's not unimaginable because obviously we're doing it. What about the book? Okay, we've got a young girl. She's sort of at 18, 19, right in that little corner. She's managed to do first year university in Syria, and she was going through to be a pharmacist, and has a deep, strong interest in botany and the uses of plants and their medicinal properties, as well as their cultural stories. So that is our heroine, Salama. And her family has been deeply scarred by the Syrian outbreak of war, and so she's pretty much the only one left, although there seems to be the possibility that her brother is still alive in a prison. And then there is her sister-in-law, Layla, who is pregnant. And we see Salama going to and from the hospital as a pharmacist. Well, she's not graduated, so she's just filling in. But as the tragedies accrue, she's becoming more and more of a doctor who can do a lot of minor procedures until the point where she's assisting with amputations. So in the hospital setting, we see the increasing trauma and desolation of her city of Homs, Homs, and that is where the Syrian Free Army is battling against the mainstream government. So there are a lot of bombs. At a certain point, there's actually a gas attack. That's the setting. The setting is very, very well drawn out. It's like I was tense every time she had to leave the hospital and go to her home. I was anxious. I don't know how they got groceries. There's snipers. It was just so impossible to live in those streets, and that's where the war was taking place. So then we also see the hospital and Salama's growing need to leave. She wants to get onto a boat to go across to Italy and from there to Germany. And she's just torn with guilt. She's got to leave her family members behind or their graves. And also her patients, although she's not a trained doctor, they're still her patients because she's had to do surgeries on them and she's interested in their well-being. And also she's like really torn about, how do I leave my country? I don't want to be leaving my country. You're forcing me to do something I don't want to do. And she meets someone who she might have met as a potential groom. And he's going through the same things, but his dilemma is not from dealing with the wounded. He is one of these young people who's using his camera to document the war around him, and he eventually gets to the hospital where he's starting to film the mayhem in the hospital. So the two of them hadn't actually connected. They were kind of always on the periphery of each other's lives, and then they connect and they realize that they had been about to be put into an arranged marriage, and they like each other. And as time goes by, they kind of think that this could work, except we're in this war, and she wants to leave and he wants to stay. So that's sort of the ongoing plot and the drives of the characters, and I think it's very well done. I felt a lot of tension while I was reading it. I felt a lot of compassion for the people who were described to me. The Dr. Zayad, who is the only senior doctor left in this entire community. Oh, what his life is like. Is it a sad book? No, yes, but no, because it's so hard. It's such a hard world that there's room for deep grief, but there isn't room for sadness. Does that make sense? Like, you skip sadness. You go straight from normal to deep, holy shit. And so, yeah, so it's not a soft book. It doesn't paint a gray picture. It's a very clear picture. The writing style, I would say that I was a little bit frustrated in the first probably 40% of the book, maybe even further, because we see Salama's dilemma about making the decision to get onto the boat, and her anxiety about all the things I've just described. And it's a very long decision-making process. And as an impulsive person, I'm one of the people that would have said, boat, yes, go. So it's not like I understand the length of time that it takes her to make her decisions. And then when the young man comes in, Keenan, when he comes in, he has to make his own decision-making process, which has to be accelerated. The boat's coming. Is he going to get on that boat or isn't he? What's he going to do about his brother and sisters? What's going to happen to Layla, the pregnant wife of the brother who's in prison? So there's a lot of points to this book, and I think the second part that I would sort of quibble with a little bit as far as the writing goes is that we have an epilogue, which I never love. Tell me the story before. Bring me to a logical conclusion. I don't want the happily ever after part. So that's very brief, and I think I wanted a sense of the ending and what they're going through and what transpires in the last week of that or days of their decision making and possible journeys. I wanted more of that because it's pretty harrowing too. Well, I don't know, like, what am I reading if I'm being harrowed? Well, that's it for me. I don't have any crazy stories this week. It's been fine, fairly calm. I turned the heat on the other day because it's actually getting cool. And yeah, I think it's just kind of a nice, quiet week. I'm so glad. I hope all your reading dreams and adventures continue to come true. And I will see you next week. Bye-bye for now.